Spain coming up. I bet you're very excited.
Viva España.
You're going to be doing... the first thing you usually...
por favor.
You have to learn more Spanish than that.
I know more Spanish than that.
Do you?
But that's the only important Spanish.
Well, you don't really use it anyway. The only thing I ever see of you is your feet up with a beer in hand. That's usually what goes around the Facebook group that we're a member of. Yeah. Will you be posting hopefully in the new Facebook group as well, the FujiCast Facebook group?
Yes, FujiCast Facebook group.
Yeah. We want loads of you in there, by the way. Loads of you. Come on.
We have somewhere to share selfies of us and...
Yeah. And you can share your selfies, but within reason, obviously. Be cautious.
Yeah, we could do a bit behind the scenes in the studio.
We could do behind the scenes in the Spanish joint as well, because I've never seen the behind the scenes thing at your place in Spain.
I will.
So this summer, the sound will be slightly different. It'll give me a chance to really work with a deep microphone here, and Kevin can have the tinny one over in Spain. But you're going to take my blue ball or something.
I'd rather take your blue ball than your red ball, that's for sure.
From a couple of weeks ago, it was red. Now
I will take your blue ball.
It's calmed down a lot, and you're going to be doing the show through. That's a microphone, by the way. It's going to be doing the show from your base in Spain. But I think it's going to be quite fun. I
can't wait. Well, mostly I can't wait for the holiday. The rest of it is just
I don't think really it's the FujiCast that you're waiting
for. The FujiCast.
Right. This week, thank you to our friends, as always, at Simpler Straps for letting us give away a Simpler camera strap each to our favourite email questions of the week. Great thing about Simpler is that they are proportioned. They're made for the kind of cameras what we like here. Max function, I said, minimal bulk, quick adjusting, non-metal hardware that won't scratch your camera. It will, obviously, Kevin's cameras will always be scratched because he just throws them into a bag. It has nothing to do with the camera strap of choice. But if you'd like to go to simpler.us, you can see what these things look like. SIMPLR, simpler.us. There's also your questions. Keep sending those in, please. Do not send them, please, through the new Facebook group. Send them by email, please. Click at fujicast.co.uk. That's not to say, as you will notice, that occasionally we'll see things in that group and mention them on the show, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's an open conversation. It's just we can't, maybe we'll pick stuff up in the Facebook group, but we can't guarantee that we can't guarantee anything really, but it's all to do with this amazing system we have about the questions. They have to come through click at fujicast.co.uk.
Now, Kevin's got a shoot on this afternoon, so we've got to get straight to your questions.
Okay.
You're going to go first.
I'm going to go first, and
Kevin. It should be noted, by the way, that we are now on the paperless system. Kevin is reading all his off the screen. I've just got a few more paper ones. Save the trees. Yeah.
So this is Alan Gump. Good old Alan.
I can't believe you've chosen Alan Gump as your first paperless one.
Alan, he deserves it. Greetings, Kevin and Neil. Terrific show as always. Loved the discussion with Gemma in 19 and Sam in 20. I put that in. I said Sam in 20 because I thought this probably came in before Sam's aired. But then actually, see, I was being kind, and then actually he says, looking forward to hearing Sam.
So you may not have liked it at all
in the next one.
Did you like that show,
hopefully
Alan?
You did, Alan. This one's for Neil anyway.
Oh, is it?
I think the question for you. Okay. I have watched all your films on Breathe Pictures. Fabulous work, superb construction, and I beg you
That's what my wife says.
And I beg you to open your kimono and share
she
with
doesn't
us
say that.
Share with us the technical details of how you go about putting together the finished piece. Take the Sculptor, your 5.5-minute film on Jo-Anne von Strum.
Johannes van Strum.
Johannes van Stum.
Sorry.
Can you please walk us through your process, start to finish, audio recording, films, cuts, splices, etc.? I have read that 24 or 25 frames per second is more cinematic than 30 frames per second. Please comment on your format. Inspired by your excellent work, I'm just dipping my tail into the video waters with my Fujifilm X-E3, which is a great film camera, actually. The first of the 4K breed, really. Yeah. And a Rode video mic recorder. Would like to do short 5 to 8 minute films on some of our unique community members. I appreciate whatever you can share in this forum, as the topic is huge, obviously. Many thanks. Yeah, that's quite a big subject.
Yeah. Well, now you're not going to like the first thing I'm going to say, by the way, because the Johannes von Stum one was the Sculptor was filmed on a Canon, not a Fujifilm. Well, not that it matters, because we keep saying this is not just for Fujifilm lovers. This whole podcast is for people who love photography.
Yeah, absolutely. But the technique would have been the same. The frames per second you chose, your splices, your cuts.
So that was recorded on a Canon C100, the original C100 camera, and it was shot at, I think it would have been 24 frames a second then. And the great thing about that camera, cinema cameras, is that of course you can send your audio feed direct into the camera. So that is obviously an advantage, and that's the way that was done. It was all filmed in available light, and because it was a workshop, and of course, the advantage here with Alan that he's actually seen that film. It was an incredible place to film in because it had this lovely diffused light.
It's a beautiful film.
It was coming in from, the windows were all diffused. I think he has them diffused so you can't see into the workshop.
Right.
And so it was almost like it was a sunny day and somebody put on this beautiful light box. And so therefore you get all these, I love these brown tones you get in films. I love that. It's very cinematic. I like that. And I often now grade toward that as well. So I tend to introduce a bit more green, and a bit more yellow on the basic and the first bit of colour grading, and then you get these more browny kind of hues that I really like in cinematography.
So that was what, 5 minutes? 5 minute film?
Yeah, it was around about. Yeah, Alan's right. About
how much footage do you think you recorded?
I didn't overshoot that. I spent the whole afternoon with him, and I think I was struggling toward the end to have the right footage that I needed.
Okay.
And that won an award, actually. I won an award at Leicester Square with that one.
Did you?
At a film festival.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, God, bloody hell. You're so good at everything.
No, not at all. I was quite surprised because I went with our friend Phil Payne, who used to be a cameraman and engineer for ABC. And he was the one.
He's the one what stole the microphone.
Yeah, he's the one what stole the microphone, geezer. And yes, he told me to enter this competition. I entered with the sculptor, and I remember them coming down to the final 5, and my name wasn't mentioned at 5 and 4, and I thought, I wasn't expecting it to be. I mean, the cinema was full of people who'd entered, and got to 3, and I thought, wow, if ever I was going to win something, it would have been 3rd. And, at the most. And then I got 2nd. I couldn't believe they read out my little name, and I went up, and I thought, I can't believe it.
Wow. Did they play it on the big screen?
They did. Played it on the big screen.
Wow. Was this at the Curzon or something?
Something like that. It wasn't the Curzon. I can't remember the one that it was. But actually, a 24 frames a second film shot in a C100, which works with the AVCHD codec.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have thought that would have blown up beautifully on a proper cinematic screen, and it did.
What did you win?
I won the Da Vinci suite for grading.
Wow, because that's like $4,500, isn't it?
It was quite a lot of money then. It's less now. Yeah. And now I don't grade using it anymore, though.
No.
I grade using the Premiere tools now.
Oh, well done you.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I've won all since then. You're the winner in this team. In our marriage, Kev, you're the winner, not me. But to go back to that question, I mean, chosen frame rates, I think we're both the same, 25 frames a second. I know people say 24, but really, can you tell the difference?
I always do 25.
Always 25.
Yeah.
And everything now is shot with the XT3. I use 200. You can select 200 megabits a second.
Yeah,
that's a pretty high quality.
You can go to 400 megabits.
You can go to 400 to overkill. I think I can't see a reason for doing that. Not for me, not for the sort of stuff I do.
No.
And there was a really interesting tip on the Peter McKinnon thing. 2 mentions in 2 weeks. Did you? I don't know if you saw this film. He was talking about his 17:9 ratio choice, and of course you can shoot 17:9 coming out the XT3, which is brilliant. That he now puts everything into his 4K timeline. He puts HD, this is going to sound weird, he puts HD into a 4K timeline, then he upscales the HD. Now you might think, well, that's going to pull this film apart like nobody's business. But actually, because of the way compression works with YouTube, when it's all sent down the sausage factory line to YouTube, it looks cleaner and sharper.
What, than just native 4K?
Than just native 4K, or just uploading it as HD. So he upscales the HD into 4K and then squeezes that down the line, and something happens with the compression at YouTube, which makes it. Now I don't understand this. YouTube, somebody could explain this, please.
YouTube, I think YouTube converts it all to H.265 codec.
Does it?
So it just makes it a lot smaller. I think. Well, you can record in 265.
So why would upscaling from HD to 4K timeline?
Don't understand that.
Footage? Why would that?
I really don't know what that is. I mean, he obviously knows a lot more about it than
Alan
us.
Gump's a fact checker. He can tell me, actually. He can answer this question.
But I know Magic Bullet. I use the Magic Bullet suite for some of my editing stuff, and they have an upscaler which does an amazing job of upscaling HD to 4K.
Yeah.
Because you can do it in Premiere Pro, and it's just not. I didn't think it's particularly good. Anyway, so. Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
But you can shoot 265 codec on the XT3.
You can, yeah. Now the editing time on that is humongous.
Well, no, I didn't think. I mean, you need a pretty beefy computer for sure, and I have a very beefy computer for sure.
You've got a big one.
I didn't notice it didn't have an issue. I had to download a new codec for editing.
Yeah.
But I did a 3-minute clip. And it was shot at
H.265,
60 frames per second,
right.
H.265, 400 bits per second, megabits per second.
Yeah.
I basically pushed it as much as it could go.
Yeah.
60 frames per second. Remember, the only X-T3 is the only camera that can do that, I think, at the minute.
Yep.
And the equivalent, right? When I'm shooting normal 3-minute stuffs in normal regular 264 and kind of 4K, that would be, I don't know, maybe 2.5 gigabytes worth of data, right? Or the outputted film would be 2.5 gigabytes. The 265 one was 95 megabytes.
Oh, right. Oh, really?
95 megabytes.
Tiny.
That's what I sent to YouTube. So on my YouTube channel, there's a film called London Nightlife or something. It's basically demoing 60 frames per second on the XT3.
Oh, I remember that film.
The file that I sent to YouTube that Premiere Pro spat out was 95 megabytes, uploaded in 4 seconds.
It's tiny.
Yeah. Whereas normally I wait an hour or so for my film to upload to YouTube.
Yeah. And
that's the benefit, you see, the file size.
At one end it's a slower edit, but the other end it's a file size benefit.
But it's not. It's only a slower edit because of the hardware. It's and you need to install the right codec and stuff.
Now this is perhaps a question for Pal Schultz. Pele Schultz. Pele Schultz. But I've been converting now, and this is something I was told to do with footage that comes out the codecs of the Fuji X-T3. I'm converting now to ProRes 422, and I'm editing. Now, admittedly, I'm using a Mac, okay. Premiere, although wasn't written for dealing with ProRes. I mean, ProRes was always something that was there for Final Cut, really.
So you're converting that codec in Premiere Pro?
Yes, I am.
You're using that codec in Premiere Pro.
So I convert to ProRes 422, and then I edit using ProRes, and the speed is just boosh, but it's knife through a butter compared to just editing the footage that comes direct as my file from the camera.
Which is, what codec is that in?
Which will be MP4, won't it? MPG, miles per gallon.
MP4.
So I just thought that was a bit of advice I received online, and I thought I'll try that, and it works.
Interesting. Okay.
Especially when you're working with Pluralize, and I've been doing a lot of stuff with Pluralize of late.
I've just written that down. ProRes 422.
Right.
All right, you'll go.
Whew, my mind is dead after that. Ian Summerscales. Hi, guys. Great show. Love the banter and genuine friendship. Blah, blah, blah. You clearly share. You both talked about inspiring photographers that have influenced your careers in a number of the shows, be it Jeff Ascough or Don McCullin. But my question is, do you look at people outside of photography for inspiration, like, say, Sean Tucker did in that episode? I think was it 9? Was it all that? No, it can't have been.
It was way back.
Yeah. Well, Sean, he did say he looked at and studies the work of film directors. And if you do, who, for you guys, do you use other mediums other than audio for Neil and his love of all things microphone to spark your creativity and possibly develop your eye for seeing and composition? Keep up the good work. With regards, Ian. Thank you, Ian. Really good question, that. Do you want to go first on that? I've slightly cheated by writing down a couple of mine.
Yeah, I do. I look at a lot of photography outside of the wedding world, like mostly kind of photojournalism, street photography. I have a lot of photo books that are not at all wedding related.
So what sort of things?
I don't know, loads.
I mean, are these books that would drive your creativity?
I don't know, it's hard to say, but definitely ones that I look at and make me think more about constructing an image, for sure. We've talked about some of them in the past, like Bob Mazur, John Mayowitz. All that stuff. Jane Bown. I've got a whole load of books that I kind of dip in and out of. I'm going to throw something in here. I want to make a film about street portraits because I'm not a street portrait man. I did do that Daytona Beach one, but I've started following this app called Medium. Have you heard of Medium? Medium, yeah.
Yeah. And there was a really interesting piece that came out this morning, how to get people to like you in 5 seconds or less. And I thought I could apply this, actually, because it's all about this guy.
I've been trying for 45 years.
Now, the interesting thing is, he starts it by saying, I had to get over 100 prostitutes to like me in 5 seconds or less. That's not the reason I read on, but I must admit, it did rather spark my curiosity. He said, I didn't do this because I wanted to sleep with him. I did it because it was my job. For about 2.5 years, I had a job that I created for myself. I had to interview people at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday night. I don't know why this arbitrary time, to find out what they were up to. This whole piece in here, which really, these are the kind of things that inspire me. I thought I could apply that to this film I want to make about street portrait, how to approach people, what to say, how people, the mechanics, both mentally and physically, behind how you approach people. And Medium, I think, is good. I've been using Medium a lot to inspire me creatively. Thank you. I got the word out in the end. But that, what about, he was mentioning Sean looking at film directors and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, me and films, I don't like any films. I don't like, all films these days are about killing people or children going missing.
This is what Gemma said about you, that you can only watch Disney.
The last film I watched that I truly really liked was oh my god, no, I'm never going to remember the name. But anyway, it was about
Trolls.
No, it was about an author, and she was an author herself, but she ended up stealing quotes from another famous author and ended up going to prison. It's a true story.
Right.
Oh, this is terrible, because now I do feel like about 100 years old. It's got that English actor in it as well. He's the sidekick.
That makes it easier.
He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for it.
Okay.
Richard E. Grant in it. Type it in quick. Type Richard E. Grant.
Richard E. Grant.
Film about a book. Richard E. Grant latest films, something like that.
Richard E. Grant.
Can You Ever Forgive Me, I think it's called. Type in Richard E. Grant, Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Richard E. Grant.
There we go. Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Yeah, there we go.
Right, there you go.
All right.
So, rewind a little bit. Lee Israel is a frustrated, hard-drinking author who can barely afford to pay her rent and bills in 1990s New York. Desperate for money, Israel soon hatches a scheme to forge letters by famous writers and sell them to bookstores and collectors.
I remember this.
And I watched that on an aeroplane.
I've never seen it, but I thought it sounded a brilliant film.
It was wonderful, and people do die in it, but they die naturally. And
is that okay for you then?
Yeah, it was good, and it's true story. It was very well acted, really well cast, and there's no guns, there's no murder, there's no kids being abducted.
Do you know, that's just Gemma said that you can only watch murder things like Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, I can only watch
Midsummer Murders.
There was one episode of Midsummer Murders that I nearly wrote in and complained about.
What about Columbo? Can you watch Columbo?
Columbo I can deal with just about, yeah.
Just one more thing.
Just one more thing. Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that inspires you.
We should do film review. Can You Ever Forgive Me? That's the only film I'll ever
Mark Commode would probably be sitting there sort of. Anyway, Green Mile for me, Stephen King. I love that. I mean, you couldn't deal with that story, I'm afraid.
I've never seen it, but it just sounds terrifying.
Well, it's an incredibly good film.
Is it about the prison?
So well written. It features it features a character called John Coffey, who is accused and then taken to the electric chair for 2 murders he did not commit. But it's about his story. But it's not just about that. There's a sub-story that runs through that this guy seems to have these magical powers.
Is it a true story?
No. There's magical powers that cures people around him of all kinds of ills. It's just a fascinating. I mean, Stephen King's writing is something else. It really is. And I'm also inspired by the world of podcasting. I mean, you did mention it, Ian. So where you dig out you can dig out some really revealing stories from completely unknown people in backwater back rooms, insightful people with creative ideas, and that's why I'm fascinated by people's voices and their stories. And some of the podcasts you can find that might only have 1 or 2 downloads. There's some amazing stuff that features people out there. I'm inspired by that. Very much so. Thank you, Ian. Right, your question. Oh, your paper list. You've got to go back to your paper list. Click. Boom, paper list.
This is
it's almost like, are you remembering to slide the ones that you've done into the right file?
I did, yeah.
Otherwise, that system that you want is...
Although I do find it peculiar, this right-click. There's no right-click on this Apple mouse thing. Right. Anyway, so first of all, I'm just going to mention Dragos. Remember, we spoke to Dragos, about Dragos a few weeks ago.
We did, yeah.
Thank you for choosing my question.
Dragos Mandach.
Yes, exactly. And we didn't know where he came from, and he says, greetings from sunny Barcelona.
Mandach. Dragos.
Dragos, exactly. Yes. So with the final S pronounced like the shy, Dragos. And he also goes on to say that Ivan Drago, without the S, was the Russian boxer, which I was correct about.
Yes.
And you seem to think he was a Star Wars character or something.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Anyway, that's not the question of the week.
I saw, though, in the PS here, Neil loses a point for putting me in the camp of negative characters.
Yes, you said
I knew he was the bad cop amongst you, too.
You said he was... Dragos was in Star Wars or something.
Oh, I did.
Yes.
Yeah, but I've always wanted... I think that playing the villain in a film would be so much more fun.
Okay, so my question... Yeah, I do too. John J. Alvaro. First of all, love the show, etc., etc. Here's the question. I have an X Pro 2 instead of...
Can I just stop you there quickly for fear of somebody writing and saying, don't interrupt Kevin, but do you remember that bit in Despicable Me where he goes, blah, blah, blah? We should dig that out if we could possibly... or get somebody to act it so we don't get in copyright trouble with it.
I bet you it was the despicable character. The minions, aren't they? He was called Kevin as well.
He was.
Right, I'm going to do that.
Sorry, God. John J. Alvaro.
First, love the show. Blah, 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 blah. Here's the question. I have the X Pro 2 set of prime lenses. My daughter loves to shoot, and I got a used XE1 for her to share and learn on. Photo walks feel like a good excuse to bond and to see the world at her level. Are there ways to set Fuji cameras so that kids can learn on a curve while still allowing them to explore things like exposure and focus?
Oh, great idea.
Yeah, by the way, she's already taken a couple of epic shots because apparently people are way less aware of kids with cameras than large bearded men.
Yeah, it's true.
That's true. Yeah, that's very interesting because the X...
Can I click onto his website if you've got that question?
Go for it.
Because he sent... And it's fascinating when you send in your websites, by the way.
Yeah. I can't remember the XE. I don't think the XE has the auto switch. Oh, does it? And the XT30s and stuff, I think, do. I don't have them in front of me right now. So some of the cameras do have the auto switch, which basically turns it into P mode and looks after everything for you.
Right.
And that's like Rosa has got my old XT10, and that definitely has the little switch. So I often put it in there for her. Whether there's like some kind of graduated curve, it's hard to say. I mean, I would possibly start with making sure the camera's on P mode or A mode, and then move it to just use aperture priority perhaps, and then bump in and come in on board with the shutter speed, and then I always think ISO is the last one to start thinking about. So ISO. I got in trouble a lot saying ISO.
Aperture's a good way for kids to start one. I want it more blurry, Dad, like you have in the background. Blur, 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 blur. So, and that setting on our aperture priority. Thomas, my 9-year-old, has used the X100F a bit, and he understands the aperture priority mode, and he composes single point in the middle and then recomposes, which I'm delighted to see.
Yeah.
So he's not moving it around with the switch. He's actually focus and recomposing. I can see him moving the camera, which I think is great.
Yeah. So that's basically what I would do, I suppose.
Anna McCarthy, this is quite a long one. I'm going to issue you the strap straight away. Cool, that sounded a bit violent, didn't it? I'm issuing you the strap.
Warning.
Some sort of punishment.
Poor old Anna.
Sorry, Anna, I didn't mean it like that. I absolutely love that John Swanell interview. What a lovely, genuine, interesting guy with a beautiful voice. He does, you are right. I had an idea. Get folks to send in their stories of photographing celebrities. I have a few. My shoot with Joseph Fiennes. Oh, come on a minute. You've started with right at the top of the tree there. Who'd forgotten, and I had to get him out of bed. Right, that's a story in itself. Photographing Martin Parr next to a poster for his retrospective at the Barbican above a litter bin. In brackets, he didn't get the joke. And my friend Chloe, he went to Downing Street to photograph Sherry Blair in the days of film and left after a great shoot realising she had no film in the camera. Needless to say, she had the guts to ring the bell again and just come clean, and Sherry let her back in number 10. That's a brilliant story. Anyway, questions. I understand using dedicated mirrorless lenses is really the only way, not using one's old digital SLR lenses with adapter. Something about them compromising the performance, I think, of the focusing and sensor. So, whether I stay with Nikon, and go for their first mirrorless offering or not, do I still need to go the whole hog and invest in the new dedicated lenses in your view? Now, this could be any system when you're changing, I suppose, couldn't it? Transitioning from one system to another is painful, guys, and a confusing process. What would you suggest, Kevin?
Okay, so, Anna, I would say that, of course you can use the adapted lenses, and a lot of people do, but I think the adapters are few and far between, the ones that allow you to use autofocus. I think you have to manual focus on many of them, which could present a problem, and I just think, you know what, it's better. Even when I used to shoot with Canon, I would only use Canon lenses, and I never really went down the use of
proprietary. Well, I
never used Sigma lenses.
Did you not? I used Sigma quite a lot with when I was shooting Canon.
I'm sure they're fine. I just never did it, and I just think it's you're probably going to get the best out of the best, aren't you? It's a little bit like using Audi tyres on a BMW or something. I guess they're going to work, but are they going to be quite rightly aligned?
Have they been set up for it?
Yeah, exactly. So I would probably go that route, especially if you're a pro. And you're making money out of it. That would be it. Although saying that, you can get some very funky results out of legacy lenses, and from a creative point of view, artistically, some of the old, the really old, those kind of Russian military lenses and things like that you can get. They can give some really weird.
And you can get those really
results.
Cheap as well, can't you? Yeah, you pick them up for about 30 quid, stuff like that from eBay.
eBay's full of them.
Did you remember? This is going back a few months now. She said, "P.S. There were a few PPSs on here. I'm with Neil on this one. I eked out my Easter egg like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for months and months. Do you remember we were talking about you'd stolen all your kids' Easter eggs, hadn't you?
Yeah, I've already eaten their ones from next year.
But then I'm a child of the 60s, 70s, born 66, and Easter egg was a major deal then. I did once eat the whole of my sister's Easter bunny before she'd even opened it. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's clever.
She was restraint personified. I was made to send her a sorry note. This has obviously stuck with you for many, many years.
Yeah.
Anyway, Anna McCarthy, I am sending you a simpler, SIMPLR, camera strap. Enjoy. Put that down there in the camera strap pile.
Well done.
One more from you, then it's interview time.
Okay, and I think this is quite a useful one, quite an interesting one, also because I'm kind of tired as well right now. It's been
still tired?
Busy season so far. It's July.
Spain, it's only a couple of weeks away. Spain. Just keep thinking of Spain.
Yeah, but do you not get that in July? Isn't that like I always say to Gemma at the beginning of July, just ignore me for a month.
Do you?
And I've got all kinds of stuff going on.
She does that for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
11 months.
That's true. Yeah. Who said that? She says. So this is Emily Renier, and actually I'm going to send Emily a strap because I think she sent us quite a few questions. I don't believe we've sent her a strap before. So Emily, well done. You will get the simpler strap. And the question is, hi guys, another question. Am I asking too many? Well, there you go. No worries if you can't answer it. Not at all. You can send us as many as you want. Yeah. Just wondering how you cope with tiredness and loss of focus during the end of a shoot.
What did you say?
Yeah. Who said that? Loss of focus during the end of a shoot. Now a fair few years into your career. I find that after a 2-hour shoot, I am absolutely exhausted. A level of tiredness not experienced before.
Yeah.
Aspiring to be a documentary photographer means that I am living every moment, second by second, intently, just in case one passes me by.
Oh, wow, that's exhausting.
So by the end of the shoot, my levels of concentration start to waver, and after the shoot, I tend to go home and sit on my sofa staring at the wall blankly for a while. 2 shoots this weekend, and this morning, I'm struggling to get up and go to my day job. I used to teach 32 kids all day, every day, and I didn't find that as tiring as I do shooting for 2 hours. Catching moments is exhausting. Will it get easier with time?
Nope.
Yeah, nope, I agree with Neil. Actually, yeah.
I think you start seeing,
no.
I think you can, what's that phrase, unconscious and conscious competence, where you start to, you do something long enough and it becomes unconscious competence, which is ideally what you're looking for, isn't it? I don't believe that means even in artistry.
But pilots have that, don't they?
Yeah. And driving, when you first learn to drive, you think, I've got to change first to second and third and look out the window and look in the mirrors. And then after a while, you wonder, what all that fuss was about.
Yeah, true. I mean, in fairness, though, I do think I don't feel like I struggle so much as I used to, for sure. But then I probably don't shoot as much. I probably relax more. I'm probably more aware of my abilities, my delivery, my all of that other stuff. I think when you start when you start out, you tend to panic a bit and just I must keep shooting, must keep getting this, must be doing that, and that's not necessarily always the case. So I think it probably will get better, but maybe not. There you go. How about that for a rounded answer?
Enjoy the struggle. We are artists, darling. We have to be in a struggle.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the whole idea of it.
But put a TV on your wall, so when you go home and you stare at the wall blankly, you've got something more interesting to look at.
That's it.
That's my answer.
So then, time for the interview. Jo-Anne McArthur this week. Oh, we will come back, by the way, to do some more interviews with those speaking at the X-Weddings Conference number 2. We've got a few people lined up over the next couple of weeks, of course, and we've got a few months to run now, so you'll hear all the speakers before the actual conference itself. Jo-Anne McArthur is our guest this week. For 15 years, Jo has worked as an animal photojournalist. She believes that we're somewhat disconnected from what we eat. But while she's an activist, don't go confusing her photographic work with a style of hectoring, harassment, or even more violent acts, sometimes all too easily associated with animal rights activism. She's been documenting, photographically that is, the plight of animals on all 7 continents. She's the author of 2 books about the subject and was the subject herself of a Canadian film called The Ghosts in Our Machine, a film that follows Jo as she tries to have her incredibly potent animal stories published. Now, it seems strange to say before you even hear the interview that we intend to return to this subject and to Jo with a much longer version, hopefully before the end of the year. But when I was introduced to her work by Ben Gillett, a FujiCast listener, I was very keen to air some of her thoughts about this intriguing photographic genre as quickly as we could. Jo, let's get this one out the way immediately, as so often we're thought of as just a Fuji-biased program. One geek question, and we can brush that under the carpet and talk about important stuff. What do you shoot with, and why?
Oh, I'm a Nikon gal. Mm-hmm. I have not converted over to mirrorless, though I thought of it quite a bit. I really looked into it mostly as a weight issue because, we photojournalists with a bunch of lenses and Nikons, it can be pretty cumbersome on your back for, 8 to 10 hours a day. But you know what? I've tried other cameras and I just adore my D4S. I adore my D850. Their capabilities and also for low light shooting is just dreamy to me. And after much thinking, I've decided to just continue with it. As for the brand loyalty, I think it's just a matter of me having started with Nikon. Often we stick with what we started with. Not always, but that's certainly the case for me.
Of course. That D4, though, it is a heavy camera. And when I look at the stories that you shoot and the places you shoot in, I'm imagining you must have biceps of steel.
Good back muscles, I think, because everything, carrying things long distances and for long hours. But, I do tell people, they asked me also, what's my secret and how do I do all this work? And part of it, honestly, is staying in shape. Because my work is very, very active, climbing things all the time, really, be they fences or trucks, in order to gain access and to be able to see what I need to shoot.
Before we get to We Animals, the project I want to uncover a lot more now, let's discuss you and your motivation. And to do that, I visited the original website, if you like. Though I've seen you shoot portraits, and I only just found out that you've shot 600 weddings as well. I had no idea about that. What inspired you to tell stories about animals in particular and their plight and what they mean to the world?
Okay, well, my initial obsession was street photography, war photography, and photojournalism, and I was going in this direction. I was interning with Magnum photographer Larry Towell and trying to figure out where I could go and what I could do. And I knew I wanted to photograph, strife and conflict and issues that are important in the world. And I said to Larry, I think I'm going to go to Afghanistan. And he gave me some very simple and wise advice. He said, Jo, that's not you. He said, do what you love, do what you know, and do what you love. And what I know a lot about is about animals and how animals are treated and how animals live and die at our hands worldwide. And I started thinking about this and seeing that, yes, we have a lot of coverage of wildlife. We have a lot of coverage of pets and companion animals, but there is this other category. I call them the invisible animals. And they are the animals we have a very close relationship with because we eat them, we wear them, we use medicine that's tested on them, but we fail to see them in our lives. They are invisible. And they are as sentient as the other animals we revere and care for. And I thought, okay, well, I think this is my story. And I just started shooting close to home. And I'm a traveler anyway. So anywhere I would travel, I would, look at how animals were being used in those countries. And essentially, it's a topic that is endless, unfortunately, whether it's birds being kept, at the local pet store and animals in the exotic trade business. I mean, you see that everywhere, or whether it's more investigative work, investigating factory farms, bear bile farms, all these interesting and crazy and terrible ways that we use animals. And so it became a preoccupation and an obsession. And also because I'm driven to take these images to educate people and help create change.
So often passion is expressed, and I think we've touched on that now within your answer, really, is the most important element of getting involved in a campaign issue. But I do think a healthy amount of frustration, which I think you've expressed, and even anger can be just as expressive.
Well, I'm really glad that the images communicated something to you and that you reacted to them. People do. They are uncomfortable images, and I'm very angry and I'm very frustrated about how we treat billions and billions of animals every day worldwide. But it's a good question because I don't really want my anger and frustration to translate, because that will also translate as didactic and telling you how to feel and telling you how to react. I want to create images that are poignant, painful to look at, but beautiful enough that people will return to the image. And that's the big challenge with photographing. My God, animals in their last moments of life as they go to slaughter, or the confinement of hens in cages by the hundreds of thousands in a single barn. I try and show not just the animal and perhaps get a glimpse of what their experience might be, but also the focus is the constraints and the bars and the cages and the fences in which we keep animals for our use. So the project is called We Animals, which, can have many interpretations. And so I want the images to make us self-reflect, but I don't want people to turn away from them. And if the images are just too gory, or if they are just too direct and not nuanced, people are going to dismiss them or not look at them.
It's interesting you mentioned the didactic, the fact you didn't want it to be that. Do you find yourself, particularly when you're with people that I suppose are the root cause of this cruelty, how do you disengage with them to then engage with the animals?
Well, I really like people. That's part of why I do this work and why I was interested in, social issue photography in the first place. the people I might have a really hard time with are the ones who are making the most profit off of animal use. So, slaughterhouse workers and factory farm workers, I mean, they are people who need a job. I have nothing against these people. People who are maximizing, profit and designing the cages so that we can stuff, 35 birds into an enriched cage instead of 10 and this kind of thing. Like it's pretty insidious. And the public tends not to know about, how the animals live, the animals we're eating. And so I don't begrudge people too much. I am frustrated, but I'm just trying to, communicate through my photos. If my words can't, quite do what I want, I try and let the images speak.
I'd like to get a little bit behind how you managed to make these pictures. You're a photojournalist. You're telling stories and you're telling plights within those pictures that you're making. And some of it is not comfortable, is it? Not comfortable for perhaps not just the viewer, but because you're making a story where people are watching you photograph, and are they wondering what you're doing? Are they concerned that you're telling their story in a way they wouldn't want it to be told?
Oh, I totally understand what you're saying, and you might be assuming that I always have permission when I don't, which is an unfortunate part of the work. It's a part of the work that I really dislike, which is basically trespassing on properties worldwide, because in particular places where animals are used in research, food, and fashion, like fur farms, these places are not open to someone like me who wants to photograph the conditions as they are on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I have been invited to plenty of slaughterhouses and factory farms, and I've been given tours from owners. In that regard, I have said, hey, I'm a photojournalist. People are really disconnected from their food. I'd like to show the whole process. And they say, yeah, we agree with you. Okay, we'll give you a tour. But the places get really cleaned up when you do that, and everyone's on their best behavior. And if I go uninvited, I don't break and enter. I tend to climb fences, and I go through open doors, unlocked doors. But if I go uninvited, then I'm going to get a glimpse, and therefore the world is going to get a glimpse of more of a true sense of the conditions, which are often extremely unclean, stinky, crowded. All sorts of things you can see on the We Animals media page.
Okay.
We have galleries on every kind of industry. So I don't like to lie, and I don't like to sneak around, but I do have a loyalty to telling these stories in a true way. And unfortunately, that's how I have to get those stories sometime. And I'm always up for debating that with people, but that's still how things have to go with me.
When you look at factory farming, for example, on the We Animals website, I mean, it's practically an A to Z of cruelty in some respects, isn't it?
Yes, duck farming in Australia, Nepal.
Yeah. Greyhound racing, Hurricane Florence.
Sheep sale yards.
Yeah, sanctuary.
Poaching.
Yeah.
And you mentioned sanctuary there. Thank goodness I get to photograph the good as well as the bad. I think I'd be going crazy otherwise. But there's a lot of hope in the world, and I focus on that.
I'm bound to mention David Attenborough, who's a UK gem.
Yes.
And of course, I wonder sometimes with journalists such as David Attenborough and photojournalists such as yourself. And I've talked to conflict and war photographers and spent time those who spend their time in continents dealing with humanitarian disaster, where the focus is on people, not necessarily the wildlife affected. But I've always been fascinated by the ability for people like David and yourself to disconnect, not empathically, not at all, but in terms of non-interference when making sometimes horrific pictures and stories of plight.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's nice to have that acknowledgement. It's sort of hard to explain. And I think with, what I have in common with these photographers is that we are trying to change a situation, an event, a system, but we can't help those who are right in front of us. I mean, we rarely can. And that is traumatizing. And a lot of us are, really carry the wounds from that because, first of all, we're doing this work because we care so much. So to go to these places and to face the suffering and then to leave only with pictures, I mean, it is honestly, it's awful. It's the worst part of my work. And especially, again, because we care so much. So we do need to look after ourselves in that regard. And I think also it means we have the responsibility to do the best that we can with those images. And that means getting them out into the world. And I always tell photographers, yes, part of the job is shooting, but an even bigger part of the work is getting it out into the world where the images belong. There's no sense doing this terrible documentary work and then having it sit on a hard drive, is there?
And it's much more than just making pictures. There's a huge degree of thoughtful composition within your work. All those things that we think are, the artistic bedrock of how we work still counts, though, when you're making even these horrific stories sometimes.
Perhaps it counts especially because if the images are not beautifully composed, people will just want to turn away from the images. So perhaps we have to take even extra care. And honestly, this is just a really it's like an out-of-body experience for me when I'm in a slaughterhouse and these beautiful bulls are, with dignity going to get their necks slit. And I'm there like crouched next to them, as this horror, this violence is inflicted on them. And to stay with them as they pass away in pain. And oh my gosh, I mean, it's really something. But we just don't consider the steak on our plate. We don't consider the wings and the ribs. And I want people to have a thought for these animals and hopefully to change the amount we consume.
We Animals Media, though, the project, because we spoke actually almost a month ago, I think, initially. You've just had a launch, haven't you? So tell me all about it and what that has done for the organisation, because obviously it's not just you. There's Sally and Kel and Anna and Odette and Kelly and Vanessa. They're all with you on this journey. They're not necessarily filmmakers or photographers, of course. They come from marketing backgrounds, all those sort of important elements that will thrust this organisation forward. So tell me about the launch.
Yeah. It's an evolution of We Animals. We Animals was a solo pilot mission for many, many years. And, I want to do my work, but I also want to reach farther always. It's always important for me to be thinking about, well, what can I do to get more of these stories out into the world? And so the idea of We Animals Media was born. And that requires, staff and a director of operations and a communications person to be organizing with new contributors. So over the past couple of years, I've been observing who are the animal photojournalists out there, and not so much the wildlife people. There are lots of those, but who's doing investigative work and who's kind of like in very gutsy ways, like breaking new ground with this kind of work. So I have been building relationships with new photographers and filmmakers, recruiting them. We've got about a half a dozen of them now listed as contributors on the site, but we have at least a dozen more who we are onboarding. We Animals Media is funded by donors and grants. And there is a granting body called the Open Philanthropy Project. And they actually approached us and said, hey, how could we help you scale up? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a dream come true. I said, well, actually, we want to create We Animals Media from We Animals, and this is our plan. And they said, okay, well, we'd love to give you a grant to help make that happen.
Well, where would you like to see the organisation go? What's your absolute goal, your desire, your dream?
First and foremost, I would like the organization to be successful. I would like it to draw really interesting and creative contributors who want to use our media agency as a platform. We have specific projects that are important to us right now, like the We Animals Asia series. So not only Asia, but the BRIC countries with these rising economies, which means the increase of animal use. And so increase of animal use also actually means an increase in the counterweight, which is the activism and the NGOs that are springing up to fix this and balance this. So I want to work in these countries. I want to work with interesting people who are creating solutions. So I think we'd like to move towards a more solutions-based approach over the coming years. I'd like to celebrate the change makers and empower other people to be change makers as well. And I think that's it.
My thanks to Jo-Anne McArthur for her time and telling us about the media, the new media launch for We Animals. If you'd like to go and see Jo's site, then there's two sites for me to recommend. Firstly, We Animals Media, so that's weanimalsmedia.org, which was what we were talking about during the interview a moment ago. The original site for Jo is JoAnneMcArthur.com, and incidentally, you can see the project called Captive on there, which is just it's horrifically stunning. Is that the phrase I'm incorrectly or rather clumsily falling over? I don't know, but it's certainly worth going to that site. And equally, you'll notice that there was an interview there recorded using a Skype facility. We've been working very, very hard behind the scenes to try and find some solutions for talking to photographers around the world, but also being able to do it using a facility where the audio is much cleaner. And we're looking forward to not so much partnering, but using Zencastr. And I mention Zencastr not because there's any kind of advert behind it, but because there are a few mails and things that we receive each week about the technical side of putting this podcast together. And I'm kind of sharing that with you as we go along because I'm really excited about it to start using Zencastr, because it means we'll be able to talk to people. And although I'm not so sure it'll feel or sound exactly like they're in the same room, but it'll be that much closer. So I'm really excited about reaching out and talking to more photographers around the globe using Zencastr. There we go. See, not only can we tech geek with cameras, we can tech geek with the sound as well. Right, back to your questions. Back to the questions.
Okay, so I'm dipping back a few months now, I think, to this email that came from Pasi Kostiander.
Right.
And it says, it's a great idea for a podcast. Vintage lenses with modern Fujifilm cameras. Now, we kind of just mentioned that with Anna's question.
Yeah, we did.
But he goes on to say, especially the radioactive ones.
Radioactive
ones.
Radioactive lenses?
Like the Takamura 55mm f2. And it says in brackets, my personal favourite because I'm too poor to buy proper modern auto lenses.
Okay.
Now, this is the thing that's interesting. Are people scared of thorium-coated lenses because of the Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, etc.?
Wow. This is something I've never heard of before.
No, I would never, ever even think about those things.
So they're thorium... Okay, so let me look up thorium-coated lens, first of all.
Yeah, you do that.
Thorium-coated...
lenses.
There we go. It comes up there. So thorium... significant number of lenses produced in the 1940s through the 70s that are immeasurably
warning
radioactive. Main source of radioactivity is the use of thorium oxide up to 30% by weight as a component of the glass used in the lens element.
Whoa.
Wow, I never heard of this before. This is fascinating.
No, I didn't either. There you go, radioactive lenses.
Thoriated glass, they call it. Thoriated glass material used in the manufacture of optical systems. Wow. Okay. So, would you use thorium-coated glass?
Don't think so.
Would you?
Just sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, it says typical radiation levels can approach 10 MR an hour, 100 U's an hour, as measured.
I can tell you weren't listening in physics.
Yeah, I did my physics GCSE 5 times, I have you know.
You got knowledge,
as measured at the lens element surface, decreasing substantially with distance.
Yeah.
At distance of 3 feet, the radiation level is difficult to detect. Well, you're going to be a lot closer to your lens, aren't you?
You're on it, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're within 3 feet.
For reference, a typical chest X-ray consists of about 10 mirrors. A round-trip cross-country airline flight exposes a passenger to 5 mirrors.
I had no idea about that as well.
And so these typical lenses approach 10 mirrors. That's bad.
Do you want to know what that mirrors actually is?
Yeah.
Mirrors.
Mister.
A mister. It doesn't tell us. Okay.
Put equation next to it.
Equation and chemistry.
Marginal
it's
revenue
not even
formula.
physics, it's chemistry. What we're talking about. God.
Marginal revenue formula. Okay.
Marginal revenue formula.
I don't think that's right. That's economics.
Yeah. That's the quantity sold.
That reminded me of university.
Revision 3, GCSE. Let's go back there. No, we're not talking about number of moles, mass and relative formula mass. God, you can tell we're well out of our depth
Okay,
here.
let's go back to the question.
Yeah.
So the answer is, now I know what I didn't know, I probably wouldn't. But had I not known what I now know, I probably would.
This is something, by the way, for our new Facebook group, the FujiCast. Have you ever heard of these lenses? Have you ever used one of these lenses? Would you use one of these lenses?
By far the most prolific producer of radioactive lenses was Kodak.
No way, Eastman Kodak.
From the 40s through to the 60s, substantial numbers of amateur cameras were produced and sold with thoriated lenses, including some of the Pony Signet and high-end Instamatic. Whoa!
Hang on a minute, I've got some of those in the display cabinet at the back.
I thought your head had been glowing green a bit recently.
Whoa, that's going straight away.
Wow.
I'd never heard of radioactive lenses before.
The most famous radioactive lenses were the Kodak Ektas.
Unbelievable. Yes. I wonder if our good friend Sanjay, who knows all about Kodak, I wonder if he'd know
his
about
dad used to
like
work for Kodak.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Maybe this is why you've had a bit of enchiladas recently.
Maybe why I've been sitting on my camera stand.
Well, I am actually going to where are we? I need to go back to it. I'm going to send Passy Constienda my strap.
Yeah, you should,
because
I think that's one of the most interesting things I've learned about lenses in a long time.
That's correct, and also we've learned that we have no idea about chemistry,
or physics, and when to use either in the appropriate times.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. And by the way, if you're listening, this is an open forum as well. Do feel free. It's not just Alan Gump that can fact check us. You can as well. Hey, Neil and Kevin. I'm Mohammed from Toronto in Canada. Hi. Love your podcast. Been listening to it since the first episode. I switched to Fuji X-T2 from 12 plus years, I guess he means, of Canon DSLRs. Love every bit of it. I was a bit hesitant to ask another question since my last question wasn't answered. Oh, no, Mohammed.
Well, no. Look, we've got...
Really?
We've got, 50 questions. Yeah.
No, it's more than that.
Now we've got the online system up and running.
There's 250... No, not 250. That's
what's
in my spam box.
73.
So, listen, we've tried to get through as many as we can, and we are thinking, and maybe you can give us some feedback on this. I think it will have to happen. It'll have to happen after Kev's done his Spanish tour. But we were thinking about doing a YouTube mop-up of questions where we just do a film dedicated, and half of it would appear on Kev's YouTube channel, half of it on mine, to really go through motor through the questions that we haven't had time to do of late. But honestly, Mahaba, we try and get through all of these. We really do. Anyway, I want to try and shoot film simulation bracketing on the X-T2 with Acros, Velvia, Chroma, so on and so forth, and want the preview on the LCD EVF to be black and white. But no matter what film simulations I set in the bracketing menu, the display always seems to be in colour, even if all three are Acros. Is there a reason for that, Kev?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I know I've never tried it. I know that you can't dictate which out of the three bracketed film simulations which one is going to display in the EVF.
No.
However, I would have thought if you chose three black and white film simulations, then they would have been black and white. But I don't know. I don't know is the answer. I need to check that. I haven't got a camera with me at the minute, but I would have to check that.
The reason I wanted to be black and white display is that it would better allow me to see the highlight shadows, which is something you say a lot.
Yeah.
So that's preaching to the choir in that one.
Mm-hmm.
When I use vintage lenses, manual focus is much easier with using focus peaking, which is true. Again, Mohammed, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if this is not a setting available now, could you please request it through Fuji? Wow, there we go.
You know, the best thing...
Come to the right man to ask.
Well, we had a couple of questions along those lines recently, and actually the best thing, yes, of course, you know, I often have a little notebook that I note down things and will pass the information on where necessary, but at the same time, you can always take to Twitter and Instagram and all that kind of stuff, and even if Fujifilm don't reply, anything that is considered a feature request does go through. They've got this kind of like huge database with loads of requests and stuff. So, so
you can ask yourself, and they will listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully.
Okay, so I've got an interesting question from Tim Kington.
Okay,
and the reason I say it's interesting, I haven't actually read the question yet, but because I photographed Tim's wedding a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
yeah. So him and his
this new paperless thing that I've given you that you've elected to use is really working, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
when I type them out or when I copy paste them, I I'd spend a little bit of time reading them and actually putting them in a kind of I shorten some of them a bit.
This is like documentary question reading.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
You know, go into it with the unknown.
Reactive.
So Tim and Kat, I photographed their wedding at the Nash Point Lighthouse.
Was it? Was it that one?
Yeah, I remember that little photo film I showed you. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful couple.
What a lovely place to photograph.
Beautiful wedding, beautiful couple, beautiful Labrador as well. Okay, so anyway, Neil, Kevin, love both of your work and thanks for a great podcast. Although I must confess, I have a slight bias toward Kevin's work because he just photographed my wedding last weekend in a lighthouse.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Thank you, Tim. Anyway, if you get a chance to read this, I have a question for you. I enjoy photography and tend to use it to document my adventures, but often travel where space and weight is at a premium and I can only really take one camera with one lens. Historically, I've always defaulted to a single prime like the 16mm or 23mm. But I have heard a strong argument made for zooms, especially around photojournalism, because it allows you to tell a story with different fields of view, which can create more interesting narrative. Looking back through my photos, I think using a single prime gives consistency to storytelling, but would you agree that a zoom lens like the 18-55 or 16-55 creates more opportunities for different types of shots when traveling and therefore interest compared to the primes?
There's a gap, I think, in terms of one of the zoom lenses I like to use. I use the 10-24, but it's an f4, isn't it, or f5.6?
But it is image stabilized.
It is image stabilized, but I wish that was faster, because it's a lens I use a lot. I could put myself in some sort of really tight situations with it, especially when I'm photographing in the kitchens. And to me, sometimes I want a shallower depth of field with it. So that's missing the arsenal of zoom lenses. And for me, that's probably what's missing in the zoom argument is that depth of field, if that's important to you. It's not important to everybody, obviously. Yeah,
I think that, I mean, I stick to primes, and that idea of consistency to images is important, specifically for the wedding work and kind of commercial photography. But the zoom, I have the 16-55, and I have the big one, the 50-140, is it? I think. Yeah. And I use those when I do my sports, when I do the great run companies work and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So they each have their place. And you know what? I mean, if I'm going away for a trip or an adventure, I would just take my X100 more than likely, because that's just me. But so with the equivalent of a 35 focal length, I probably wouldn't be adverse to take in the 16-55 instead of a 23, 35 and 50mm lens or something, because I mean, why not? The optically they are great. It's not like the old days where you used to get a lot of barrel distortion and fringing and everything on the zooms. I think the Fujifilm zooms are some of the best that I've ever seen. 1024 gives a bit of fringing. The 1024 was the first one, wasn't it? Was so first gen, wasn't it? So maybe that does, And I mean, I have that 1024, but I don't really use it. I love that lens, particularly for video work. Yeah. So I mean, you obviously use what you want. Use what works for you. The problem with the zooms they are a little bit bigger, apart from those tiny little. What's that one? 16. The 1855's quite. Is it 1855? That's quite small. That's the small one, isn't it? That's the f2 to f4 lens, isn't it? No, f2.8. The fixed lens. No, I'm talking zoom. Yeah, but it's fixed aperture at f2.8. Yeah. There's another one that's f2.8 to f4, isn't there? Yeah. Which I think is 16. I don't know. We need to find some people who know what they're talking about. Quick, we're auditioning. But thanks, Tim. We've talked a lot about consistency in focal lengths of late. There was a film director, I can't remember his name at the moment. Sorry, who made a film recently just using 35mm entirely for the whole film. Can you imagine a whole film in 35mm? Didn't what's his name do that? See, I went the safe route by saying I can't remember the guy's name, but you've just gone and sunk yourself into this. Do you want to come back to that another week, that one, along with radioactive lenses? The famous and what guy. Means. Famous guy. Can I throw some questions at you while it's... Yeah, go for it. Do you remember Ralu Chase? I do remember Ralu, There are a whole load of quickfire questions here that have been hanging around for a long time. I was just nudged on these the other day by something. And Stanley Kubrick was he just... Didn't he? He might have done. Anyway, back to Ralu. These are quickfire questions. They're not all necessarily yes or no, but you've got to be as quick as you can with them, okay? Here we go. How involved do you get with your bride and groom before the wedding? Don't.
Not at all. Do you have a set email already drafted for inquiries, or do you answer each email with a unique response?
I have a kind of template, but I tamper with it a bit.
What lens would you not go without?
23 1.4.
Do you ever miss the full frame? Ooh.
No.
When you travel for a wedding, how do you back up your files? Well, we've kind of done that one, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long answer one.
Yeah.
When you travel, do you always have a checked-in? Oh, this is good. Checked-in bag, or do you try and get away without one? In other words, do you just carry your pants in your camera bag?
I have done that in the past, but the last time I shot a wedding a few weeks back in France, I did a check-in bag just because I wanted to take a few other bits and pieces. I mean, the clients pay for it, so it makes no difference.
Thank you, Ralu, for those. Your question.
Okay, so my question is from Kathy Myers, and it says, hi, Kevin and Neil. I never really got podcasts, but I'm really enjoying yours on my commute to and from work.
Good.
How nice.
Welcome along, Kathy.
My question was inspired by a conversation that you were having about nerves before shooting a wedding, but also links to some previous questions about the photographer not feeling comfortable charging more or at all for their work. I've been the photographer for a few weddings, both second shooter and main photographer, and have covered some festivals and events, but constantly struggle with confidence, sometimes feeling as though I have to break my journey to be sick on the way to the event.
No way, that is anxious. Yeah.
Or just worrying that I'll mess it up. I'm nearly always pleased with my work afterwards, but the next time I am back feeling anxious. I can speak in public generally and you don't get that anxious about things other than photography being a one-off event. Is it a one-off event? I wonder how widespread this experience is amongst photographers and whether there are any tips that you can give around building confidence in our own work and overcoming nerves. And we have talked about this on and off. I think
it's a really good subject, this one.
Yeah, and I'm always of the opinion that if you're not a little bit nervous, you're not a little bit anxious, then I think that's a good thing. But to the point of being unwell, that's clearly not a good thing.
I'm not sure what to suggest in that kind of scenario.
Well, I mean, it will get easier. I mean, I used to be very, very. I'm still anxious and nervous, but I'm nowhere near like I used to be. Yeah. And I think what I try and think about is that I think it's something you said to me once, and I think you got it from someone else. Yeah. That we're not.
It's not going to be mine.
And he probably got it from somebody else. That we're not brain surgeons. We're not curing cancer. We are.
That was Zach. This said
Zach Arias was
the only people curing cancer are the people curing cancer.
Yeah, exactly. So it's photography, and yes, absolutely, of course, you want to get it right. And what is the worst thing that could possibly happen? If you're shooting weddings, of course, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that you have a calamity with your memory cards and you lose all of the pictures. Okay, that is a terrible, terrible thing to happen. Nobody died.
No.
They still got married. They still have memories. 1,000 other iPhone pictures have been taken.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not brain surgery.
No.
So that's what I try and tell myself. Of course, you still want to make sure you do a very good job when you don't want your cards to fail. And I'm touching all of Neil's wood things.
Thank you very much.
And
the pleasure's all mine.
Warning.
Kids, stop listening now.
But yeah, so just try and relax a little bit and try and think more about the goodness of the event that's about to unfold rather than the negativity.
I certainly remember from my broadcasting days, a broadcaster saying to me, anxiety is a strong artistic aphrodisiac. I can't exist without it.
That's a very good quote.
I love that phrase.
We're never going to get that all around the side of a cup.
No, that's true. All right. Questions. I've got something here that I've got my question in a second, but can I just cover this one off? From Alexander TE. It was a tip that was sent about switching slots. If you push play, then push and hold play. Because I was talking about changing slots for when you want to send off an image to your phone,
right?
Using a Bluetooth, or Wi-Fi, yeah. But of course, you can't do that with a RAW file. You can only do it with a JPEG.
Correct.
So there was this thing about taking your card out and putting it in the other slot. And of course, you don't need to do that at all. If you push play and then push and hold play a bit, you'll change from card 1 to 2 without swapping memory cards.
Yeah.
Then you hit function to get into send mode, mark the images you want to print or send, then push back button, it sends it automatically.
Yeah, and also you can change the playback card in the menu as well.
Yeah.
So that's a similar thing, yeah.
Just thought I'd say that one.
Good,
since we were talking about that.
Yeah.
Right, question. Hi, Kevin and Neil. I think we've got time for 2 more questions, and that's it for the week.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in letting the camera do most of the work. This is from Stephen Edgar. Big fan of Kevin's, in brackets. All right, there we go.
Thank you, Stephen Edgar.
Yeah, I generally shoot on aperture priority using spot metering, using auto white balance, auto ISO, shutter. So once I have the camera set up, all I'm really adjusting is aperture and exposure compensation. When I review my photos after a shoot, I never look at them and think to myself, I wish I'd shot that with a different shutter speed or a different ISO. Most of the photos I review, I'm usually unhappy with and think I could have done better. But I'm not unhappy because I've got one of these settings wrong. It's usually more to do with the image, it's boring, or the angle is wrong. Even the photos I'm happy with and keep in my collection, I never look at what the shutter speed was, and so on and so forth. In my opinion, if it's a good shot and I'm happy with it, then that's all that matters. When I hear people being interviewed about their photos, they usually always talk about what the ISO was, what the shutter speed was, what the aperture was. I couldn't tell you what these settings were in any of my photos. Is it important?
Well, do you want me to answer part of it?
Or he said, should I even be paying more attention to the settings my camera has? Does it matter? No.
Well, yeah, I mean,
really?
No, yes and no, I agree with you. It depends a little bit on, I suppose. I think it's important for people to understand what will make more light hit the sensor, what will make drag, what will make, less light hit the sensor and stuff.
Yeah.
But myself, personally, I shoot a lot on P mode, A mode in the feature film world. Yeah. And I agree. I mean, often, I for a very, very long time, I embedded all of the EXIF data into all of my pictures that I put on my website, and I still do on my f16.click website.
Right.
But on my wedding website, I used to embed all of the EXIF data because I would get so many questions.
Yeah.
Literally, what did you shoot that with?
Yeah, it makes sense because of your position with being an ambassador,
which is fine, and I don't mind. But I was just like, I've no idea. I just had no idea, and so I would just reply saying, you know what, the EXIF data is in the image if you want to take a look. But no, because I had a web server meltdown, and I've had to change my website completely. That
was intriguing. We should have mentioned that on the show.
Yeah,
actually, probably you didn't want to mention it.
I'm trying to blot it out. That entire
it wasn't a great
life.
Couple of weeks, was it?
No. But no, and in order to, one of the things I've done is stop doing that. But I still keep it on my F16 website. And, I can usually look at one of my pictures and pretty much give a good estimate of what the exposure is and what lens it is. Yeah. But do I need to know? No. Should you need to know? No. Do you invest yourself in it? No. Is it important to understand the parameters and what makes the image like it is? Then I think that's true. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, if you take a fantastic picture of something and me asking you what the ISO, what the shutter speed, what the aperture was, that's not going to empower me to go and make another amazing picture just by knowledge of that. Knowledge of knowing the focal length is far more interesting to me. Yeah. That's one of the things I looked at when we went to the Don McCullin exhibition. I was fascinated by his proximity to his subject, and of course, I went into my. So I go into this thing. I'm thinking, right, what was that shot? And was that 24? I'm using old the language here. 24? Was it 35 or was it 50? And that was the thing that consumed my technical thoughts. Obviously, mentally looking at those pictures was a whole different journey in itself. Yeah. Good. Thank you very much. Right, last question from Kev. Okay, this is from James Sauls, who interestingly sent us this wonderful little picture. Look at that. Yeah, it's a cream tea and a flower, and that all will become. That's making me feel hungry. Yeah, I know. All will become apparent. Hi, Neil and Kevin. I'm sat at a wedding, tucked out of the way, eating this amazing cream tea as my photographer meal. But it doesn't look like that now. I thought, no time like the present to enter the ex-wedding draw. Oh yes. So, if you do mention on your emails that you send us that you would like to be in the ex-wedding the draw for a free ticket for the ex-weddings, then we will be doing a drawing out of the hat randomly. I think we're going to have to do that this week. Yeah, we'll have to do because it's getting it's getting closer. Yeah, it will be. Yeah, so it's the end of July, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, we'll do it soon. We'll do it soon. Everybody who has done that, has mentioned it, will get put into a hat, and we'll get one of the kiddie winks to pull one out of the names. Okay. So question. Sorry, I'm waffling again. I do have a question too, but less on photography, more about business. What are your top 3 or 4 tips to drive SEO traffic to your website? I'd rather manage this myself than pay someone, as I want the website to really reflect me and my style, me and my personality through the words that I use. Also, I have my website housed. He does say housed, but what he means is hosted.
Oh, it's quite a nice sort of English way of saying it's housed with GoDaddy WordPress.
I have my
not
website housed through GoDaddy WordPress. I can't do it like you do. GoDaddy WordPress. Who do you use? Do you have any recommendations? I see a lot of photographers use Squarespace. Yeah. Okay, so firstly, because I've just been through web server hell, I used to actually rent my own server and host it all there, and so that was where it was, but I've subsequently moved away from that, and I now use SiteGround. It's WordPress for my WordPress hosting, but GoDaddy, there's lots of them out there. SiteGround is the one I use. What are your top 3 or 4 tips to drive SEO traffic to your website? Pretty much the same thing as I say about social media. Remember the social in social media. Remember the people in the world. Don't build your website to pacify Google. Build your website to pacify potential clients, and then Google will, by inference, be very impressed. Lots of content, lots of regular. Google loves content. Try not to over-optimize keyword stuff there, all of that stuff. Fresh content regularly. That's kind of the main stuff. There are a lot. This is like an entire my talk at the X Weddings conference. In fact, is about SEO rather than pictures this year.
Oh,
and
well, that makes it worth the ticket value alone, chaps. Advertising, ding, ding, hashtag advert.
And but it's a huge subject. But the one thing I would say...
How long are you going to spend on it in the conference?
An hour. It's an hour session,
right, okay.
yeah. Right. But the one thing I would say is that most people still make the mistakes of the past, and it's more important these days to know what will get you in trouble with SEO rather than what is good for SEO.
Right.
Because most people fall down the route of doing all of the things that they think are going to race them to the top of the search engines, and actually won't. In fact, it will get you pushed further down. So if I'm honest with you, James, all I would say is good, fresh, honest content regularly, and always consider it's a human reading it rather than Google.
Is it still 250 words? For a blog post? Does it matter? It's 50, 100, 250. Is there an optimal
250,
number?
300 words. You'll still get plugins and stuff that will tell you different words. But actually, if you only have 50 words to say about a subject, it's better to say 50 words rather than 300 words of fluff.
Yeah.
It's easy to read. It's easy to see blog posts that have used.
See, now that's I don't write enough blogs, and one of the reasons for that is because I always think, I haven't got time for 250 words. So you're not suggesting I always have to do that?
No.
All right. Okay.
Don't do it.
That's music to my ears.
Yeah. Don't do it.
Yeah. What's obviously we're not sellouts, but in that that you have quite a popular, growing YouTube channel. There's a fair chance that one day you might be saying this show is sponsored by Squarespace. What's your honest opinion?
I don't think so, because I don't use it. Actually, that's not true. I do use it for my workshops.
I like it. Well, funny enough, my new loadingzone.co.uk website, which is the one for my podcast company. I might just plug that one quickly.
This episode is loaded with
hashtag. Well, you can't blame us.
True.
Now, I do use Squarespace, and I really like the ease of being able to do stuff with Squarespace that I think I would find harder to do with WordPress.
I think Squarespace is very good.
What's the with all frivolity sucked out of this? What's your honest opinion about using it as opposed to WordPress, and why do you use WordPress?
Well, Squarespace is very, very good. I use it for my training website, like I said. And I would probably, if I was setting up a brand new business right now, wedding photography business, I would use, starting from scratch, I would use Squarespace.
But isn't the SEO not so good in Squarespace? Is it not so?
Well, no, it's not so much that.
Friendly.
It's like SEO, search engine optimization isn't. It's just code, letters behind the page. It's just the technology that goes on behind the page. WordPress is better. It's easier to organize things like categories and tags in WordPress than it is in Squarespace. But the functionality is the same across across the board. They're all, it's just, I find it more intrinsically difficult to do things like meta tags and descriptions and stuff like that in Squarespace.
So it's the back end of it you don't enjoy so much.
Yeah, and also Squarespace is, I don't know what it is, like 40 themes, and that's
you can change them quite a lot within.
But there's only 40, and your website is going to look like a lot of others. And of course, even on WordPress, you do tend to have a template. So I just think WordPress, like, I can't move my website from WordPress to Squarespace because of the SEO legacy, and it's just way too much of a job.
Just be a minefield of work.
You could do it. You could do it.
You'd need a company to do that for you.
The job would be huge. My website goes back to 2008.
Yeah.
And one of the very sobering things in this exercise of changing my web server was revisiting blog posts from like 2009, 10.
Can you just put a load of redirects on?
Yeah, you can, but they still drive traffic. So if you redirect, then that's not going to be, you're going to eventually lose that benefit in Google. So,
but if you redirected everything really old, would it matter?
Well, it would, because let's just say it's a venue that I went to in 2010 and I still get traffic from that blog post and I get bookings there. Then, if I haven't blogged about it since or something, then I've got nothing to redirect it to, and eventually Google will see the fact that that redirect points to content that's not relevant to what it was. Okay. So yes, if you have newer content that's relevant, then a redirect will be fine.
What about just saying hang this and getting a load of 401s popping up?
No, bad. 404s, you mean?
404s, sorry. Yeah. 401.
No, you don't want 404s. So 404s. I spent a lot of time redirecting. I've got very good at doing...
so that would do you a lot of harm, wouldn't it?
Regex redirects in WordPress.
Right.
I've done a lot of that. It probably means nothing to you, but it's formulaic redirects.
I didn't even get the 4 bit right, did I? I was thinking of denim jeans.
Formulaic redirects. So redirecting page categories and things from my old server to my new... from my old structure to my new structure. So I've cleaned it up a lot, and it's been... But I would never be able to do that on Squarespace.
Your site is super quick now.
Yeah, that's the thing. It flies. And the most... That's the other... There's a very good point, and this is what you should listen to as well, James, is mobile optimization is far more important than desktop. It is more important for your website to work and look well on a mobile device than it is on a desktop these days.
Ever.
Yeah, and in fact, Google ranks things based on mobile indexing.
Do they?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and all these goodies are going to be discussed at the X Weddings conference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there we go.
Yeah, plus more.
Plug. Hashtag. Plug. Hashtag. Yeah. Thank you very much for your involvement in the new FujiCast Facebook group. Appreciate that. And I think we'll start using bits of that on the show. I know we've said we prefer to use the questions via the email click@fujicast.co.uk, and that's the way we prefer to do it. But there are some things popping up there that we'll like to dip in with. And of course, while Kev's in Spain, you can talk to him through the FujiCast Facebook group, and he'll be delighted to be chatting to you. Or you can admin. While he's drinking his beer. You'll notice that the spellings change as the day gets longer. But thank you equally for the shares that you've started to do. As we said, if you can help by sharing the cast as well, it just gives us a chance really to do a little bit more on the road, because we've got some great ideas for stuff we want to do on the road, and on all those sort of recordings. While we mention it, 10th of September, that's obviously on for the Brighton meetup, where we'll be doing a podcast and eating fish and chips, going for a beer, going for a curry, all at the same time. I'm not quite sure.
The girls will love us. Not seagulls.
Not seagulls.
No such
I tell you what, those gulls in Brighton, they are vicious. If you hold a chip in the air, they won't think about it.
That's a great picture, though.
It'll take your hand off.
Yeah.
Murray McMillan as well. Just a very quick mention. Hey guys, I had a quick idea for a question section for the cast. So this could actually be something for the Facebook group. I was listening to the latest podcast in a hot tub in Loch Lomond in Scotland, complete with a couple of beers. Got me wondering where people listen to the show, how they're dressed. Ooh, that's opening up a can of worms. I thought it'd be fun to ask the question on the show, light-hearted part of the podcast, and get a picture quite literally, if you do it in the Facebook group of your listener base. There we go.
Brilliant.
I like that.
What a great idea.
It's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Put that in the great idea file.
Yeah.
Payoffs this week. Guess who? It's from Rosa.
My dad's Instagram is Kevin Mullins Photography. See his films on YouTube at Documentary Eye. His website is kevinmullinsphotography.co.uk. Or for street workshops, training and everything Fujifilm, go to f16.click.
I wish we had on Anchor FM, which is a hosting. We don't use Anchor for our hosting for the podcast, but they have this way of people sending in questions, really good audio quality of questions. And I was thinking that would be a really nice idea, actually. People could send in the payoffs.
We should have a telephone line.
How could they do that? Can we organise something?
Record it on your phone and then just email it to us.
Hello, that's just as easy.
Yeah.
Why complicate it when you can do things the easy way?
Yeah, you can do it on WhatsApp.
So if you want to have a go at doing one of the payoffs, this week for me it's going to be our Jack.
My dad's Instagram is Neil James. See his films on YouTube at Neil James Photo. His website is neiljames.com for pictures and one-to-one mentoring. And you can hear his other photography podcast, which is called Breathe Pictures, wherever you get your podcasts.
Music this week was some Blue Wednesday. That's the music in the background that you hear, since we do get asked occasionally where it's what it is. And big love to our friends at Simpler Straps for letting us give away a camera strap each to our favourite email question of the week. Go to simpler, simpler.us if you'd like to hear those if you'd like to see those straps and what they look like and see them in action. And it's only a couple of weeks until we start to do the shows, called a co-presented thing between here and Spain as well, which I'm looking forward to. We can't say see you next week anymore, can we? Because that upsets.
No, because in my world now that means yes. See.
Of course it does. Yeah. See. Guy, you're practically fluent.
Quisiera.
Yeah.